Hi, I'm Brian Rhodes, and I'm going to talk to you today about getting kids and students interested in InfoSec. This also goes towards people that are kind of in the industry or have done computer work in the past and want to break into the computer security field. So it's kind of good for everybody. I am Brian Rhodes again, and I'll probably cover that again in the next slide as well. So I'm going to talk about InfoSec careers, what are they in general, and how to get into them, how you can go from a student level where you're just beginning and to gain more experience, and what you can do as far as CTFs and how CTFs can help you build those skills. And then I'm going to end with some cyber defense competitions that are both at the high school and college level, and the Palmetto Cyber Defense competition that we host locally here in Charleston. I am a red team operator and pen tester in my day job. I've also been part of the PCDC gold team and red team, so I've helped build the network as well as tear it down. I've also participated in the Southeast Regional and National CCDC competitions, and was part of the team that won BSides Charleston here last year for the CTF. And my co-presenter will be Tilson Galloway, and his team actually just won the 2016 CTF. So what is InfoSec? It's this giant conglomeration of all these different diverse fields of expertise, right? So you have system administrators, you have forensic people, you have network analysts, you have legal people, you have policy people. It's kind of everything, right? So how do you go from no experience into learning about these jobs, right? So Hacks for Pancakes put out a great Mega Mix article about how to get started in InfoSec. She breaks down blue team and red team, or defensive and offensive job descriptions, and what skills you need to be successful in each of those. As you can see here, it's pretty much the spectrum of technologies, right? For the offensive things, you have the stuff that I do, which is penetration testing. You also have physical penetration testers, and those are people that actually try to jump the fence or break, pick locks and stuff like that to get into buildings. Vulnerability researchers, exploit development people that need a lot of reverse engineering skills. Bug bounties have become popular as they've been more better funded over the last couple years. And a lot of these blue team jobs are ones that have been around for decades, just maybe under different names, right? So sometimes, a decade ago, somebody that was a system administrator was responsible for all of these positions to some degree or another. So now they've become slightly more specialized, but the tools and techniques that they use are all pretty much the same, right? So how do you break into InfoSec? You have to start somewhere, and then you're in InfoSec. Before you know what you've done, you're kind of already there. But you have to start somewhere and build some very basic skills and experience, because even as a penetration tester, you first have to know how to administer systems, right? Like once I'm able to get onto a box, I have to know what to do when I get there. So how do we gain these skills? There's traditional methods like classrooms and conferences like we're at now, which are great. But a lot of the stuff that you'll be doing, you have to learn on your own. And for that, there's the internet. It's not just for porn and Facebook anymore. So there's a wealth of information out there for all of these different jobs and skill sets. You just have to know where to find the resources to use them. So if you're a high schooler looking to learn these new skills, the best option is to practice. Practice, 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 right? Practice makes perfect. There's a old number about 10,000 hours makes you an expert in something. But you can also do the same thing for 10,000 hours and never get any better at it because you're never challenging yourself to improve, right? So the best thing you can do is find something that's engaging and entertaining usually to keep you on the right path, and something challenging to make it harder so that you're continuously learning new things. So you can do this in a couple different ways. You can build a lab at home. You can do social engagement, such as finding your favorite people on Twitter and following them. There's some great information about new exploits or new forensics techniques or new threat actors that people are constantly releasing into their Twitter feeds and then generating blog posts and publishing reports. So it's very important to stay up to date with the latest techniques and stuff like that. Other options are conferences. Obviously, I'm speaking to the choir here since you're all at a BSides conference. But there are great ways to interact with other people in your field and meet new colleagues and meet new friends, and perhaps find a mentor, right? If you can find somebody that is doing interesting work in your field, follow their work and do some of your own and maybe see if they can help you as well. Once you become more knowledgeable in that field, you're in a position to take other new people under your wing to help them as they're learning. Right? So let's talk about this deliberate practice. The first thing you want to do is set very clear goals for yourself. What are you trying to accomplish? You can say, I want to be a great pen tester, or I want to be a great forensics guy, but that's very generic and very general. So you need to set clear goals for yourself and break it down into sub-skills, such as I want to know how to do memory analysis. I want to be able to recover files from a file system. I want to know about the specific policies or techniques to ensure that I'm getting clean images of a recovered drive, right? Pretty much everything can be broken down into smaller and smaller pieces that are a lot easier to master individually than trying to accomplish a generic goal as a whole. It's very important to track your progress to see where you're going and what you're both what you have done and what you have left to do, right? And feedback loops to make sure that you're on the right track, to make sure you're doing the correct things. And accountability is where other people hold you accountable for the work that you're doing. So maybe you come and present at a BSides conference and let people mock you. So Code Academy and Code Wars are good examples of deliberate practice. You can say, I want to become a better Python programmer. It's a very generic topic, right? So how do you do that? You go to somewhere like Code Academy, and it has step-by-step lessons that teach you how to do Python programming. This helps build sub-skills, such as mastery of sockets, reading and writing files, manipulating data and structures. It lets you track progress to see what you have done and what you have left to do. Then you start getting into feedback loops with websites like Code Wars, where they present challenges to you, and then you complete the challenge, and you get to see how other programmers tackle the same problems. So you get to compare your code to theirs, and your solution gets posted online as well, so other people can comment on your code. So this forces you into a habit of both learning new skills and reinforcing the skills that as you're learning them. For building a lab, this is kind of an old image from a Rapid7 document, but it kind of speaks to the point that I want to get at is it's very easy to build labs these days. There's equipment that you can get that's very cheap, or you can do pretty much everything virtually these days. This is just one example. This is more for a penetration test example, because it has Metasploitable, which is a vulnerable VM. It has a LAMP stack, which is a Linux server running various servers and applications. Has an old version of Windows XP, has an old version of Windows 2003 Server, and a couple versions of Linux. Again, this is kind of for penetration testing, but it could be expanded to do anything you want. So you can download Windows VMs from modern.ie that allow you 30 days or 60 days of a Windows 7 box with a specific version of Internet Explorer for testing things out on. There's a lot of versions of Turnkey Linux is a Linux distribution with specific servers that are enabled by default. So if you want to, you can grab a web server distribution that already has MySQL and PHP admin and stuff like that on there, or you can get like an Elk stack or a couple other things. For firewalls and networking, there's open source stuff like pfSense or free stuff like pfSense that you can practice your firewall and monitor your traffic with Snort or Suricata or a lot of programs like that. It's very easy enough so that you can set it up at home and monitor your own traffic as it's going out to the internet, and then you can generate traffic to see how it looks on the wire. There's other, if you're interested in web application stuff, there's a project from OWASP called WebGoat. It's built as a web penetration testing VM, but there is also a developer version that allows you to go in and fix the vulnerabilities as you find them. So you have both the knowledge of how to break it and the knowledge of how to patch it. So it's a little bit of both. As I mentioned, there's also cheap hardware. You can go to Goodwill and pick up, an old 2900 Cisco router and learn to play on iOS, right? Or there's wireless APs if you want to get into wireless technologies for $20, $30. So the barrier to entry into InfoSec has really dropped in recent years. So once we start to have these skills, how do we reinforce them more and build upon them is by challenging ourselves, particularly with capture the flag competitions. There are several types, and we'll kind of go through these a little bit more in detail. Jeopardy is broken down into categories and point values. It's what you see a lot of times for online CTFs. There's King of the Hill competitions like we had here at BSides Charleston, where you attack a box and you try to maintain control of that while other teams attack the box as well. There are attack and defend CTFs, kind of like DEF CON, where you are attacking other teams and defending your services from other teams. And trying to, those are tend to be, at least DEF CON is very binary and reverse engineering specific, because you're trying to watch for other people's exploits as they attack your services, while you're reverse engineering your services to develop exploits to attack their servers with. Boot to root is normally a VM or a CD that's given out that you can put in with specific flags or vulnerable services on that disk. They did this at SkyDogCon this year, and I believe last year, where they just give everybody a disk. It avoids a lot of the network congestion problems with some of the other CTFs. You'll find a lot of these on VolnHub, which I'll mention again in a minute. And finally, there's cyber defense competitions, where you act as a defender or a protector of the network, and you're trying to harden your system as opposed to trying to exploit other ones. There's also hybrids of these, like SANS Net Wars. Starts out, has 5 levels, and the first 2 levels are a boot to root, so they give you a CD with challenge questions and kind of a Jeopardy style challenges. And then levels 3 and 4 of that are kind of an attack and defend, or a King of the Hill, where you're actually trying to exploit other servers on the network. And then level 5 is an attack and defend scenario, where you're trying to protect your castle against attackers while you're trying to attack their servers. So lots of different varieties of these. This is a quick example of Jeopardy. You can see how there are lots of different disciplines and areas. Each one is a little different, but they normally have some similar main topics like web exploitation, reversing, and crypto challenges. This goes back to the disciplines needed for InfoSec, right? So each of these speaks specifically to different jobs and different skill sets, and it also helps students identify what their passions are, right? You might be very interested in doing web stuff, or you might be very interested in doing network stuff or forensic challenges. And doing these CTFs helps you identify the things you really like to do and gives you a little bit more focus as to what career opportunities you might want later. Facebook just released a framework for doing CTF challenges. This is basically the same thing as that last slide, except much fancier. This is also a Jeopardy style challenge, just broken up into more of a risk format where they have countries instead of categories. There's a couple other frameworks that have been set up so that you can actually build your own CTF and host it yourself.
Is that the Facebook one? When it was first released, I downloaded it, and it seemed like that was the framework that you created around. Did they change something the last year since they released it?
No, not really. That was the intention of it, is that they provide the framework and you provide the challenges and fill it in so you can run your own CTF. This is kind of an old slide, but it still holds true. A lot of the tools that are used in these CTF challenges are the same tools that are being used by people in the industry today, right? You still have networking people using Wireshark and TCP dump and Nmap and Telnet. You still have reverse engineers using IDA Pro and GDB and RAID Air. Same for forensics, crypto tools. Not as much steganography in the real world as in CTF challenges, but that's still in there. So by doing these CTFs, not only do you know more about the individual fields, but you become comfortable with the tools that you would then use working in these professions. There's a couple really good starter capture the flag competitions. Pico CTF and Easy CTF are designed for high school level challenges. They're also up year round. There's a 2013 and a 2014 version of Pico CTF, I believe, that's available now. The MITRE STEM CTF just ended. It's an annual event, but it's also aimed at high schoolers, but it's open to anybody that wants to play. VulnHub is good for the boot to root challenges that I mentioned a couple slides ago, where they have a vulnerable VM that you can download, such as WebGoat, and I think the SkyDog boot to root CTF is also up there. And you kind of go through and find flags and try to escalate on that image. Each year, SANS also does a holiday hacking challenge that they put lots and lots of time and effort into. I believe this year it starts on December 9th. And they also leave old versions up on the internet so you can continue to play them from their website. Finally, the link at the bottom to CTF Time is a website that tracks and monitors CTF events. There's a giant calendar. If you are super interested in CTFs, there's one happening every couple of weekends in random parts of the world, and there's always something going on. Next, we're going to focus on cyber defense competitions. All right, so these are where you are protecting your network and your computers from attackers. Cyber Patriot was created by the Air Force Association. They give you on their website, they give you training materials and practice images that are focused at a high school level, but they are very good foundational material for anybody that's interested in hardening boxes. So they have Windows and Linux hardening, they have some router documents on there, some policy documents on there. It's a great place to start for pretty much anybody interested in getting into InfoSec. During the actual competition, I was able to see one on yesterday. Actually, I went out to one of the high schools that was going through their first round of the competition. They're given VMs to download, and at the time allowed to start, they're given a key to unlock those VMs and unencrypt them. They were given one Windows 7 box and one Ubuntu workstation. They also had a Cisco Packet Tracer Challenge where they had to build out a networking infrastructure and submit it for scoring. There was a networking quiz that they had to complete that was, I think, 10 to 15 questions of network questions, multiple choice for the most part, a couple fill in the blanks. And on the workstations, they also had forensic challenges. So they were given a scenario email that basically said, you are now the IT person for this company. We want you to harden these workstations. There were a couple of tasks included, such as adding user accounts, or they were given a list of authorized users that should have accounts on the system, and then the students were required to try to lock down those boxes. The nice thing about this is they got immediate feedback. So if it says Harry needs a user account and his username needs to be Harry, as soon as the kids go into the box and add Harry, it plays a little noise and it shows up that says, like, you added Harry's user account, you get 5 points. Or if you find somebody in the user account list that is not on the authorized users from the email and you delete that email, delete the user account, it plays another noise and gives you 5 more points. So the students know exactly what they're doing right or wrong as the scenario progresses. Beyond that, it's somewhat open. It's scored out of 100 for each of the 2 boxes. Other than doing user accounts, it's fairly generic. Other than it says things like there should be no unauthorized software or media on the machines. So then the kids have to go look through and find out that user Bob downloaded some MP3s, and you delete the MP3s out of Bob's folder and you get more points for that. And then they have to do policy enforcement and things like that in order to continuously lock down the boxes until you get 100 points. So there's a couple rounds of this, and then it goes into like 3 tiers, like silver, gold, and platinum, I guess. And students work their way up. This is also available for middle school students now, I believe. So getting kids started at a very early age, right? For the college level, there is the Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition, or CCDC, where students are given a small business scenario, and there are active red teams on the system attacking them while they are trying to defend the network. There are automated scoring engines, but unlike the one for Cyber Patriot that are on the host, these are external that are polling their services and checking them at specific intervals to make sure that they're still up and running. There is usually simulated network traffic on the competition network. Sometimes you even have what's known as an orange team that actually plays user roles, that goes and tries to buy things off the website or sends email using the email server in the competition network to verify that things are still functioning as they should, in case the scoring server isn't intelligent enough to detect certain misconfigurations. The volunteer red team is made up of people from industry or from academia that will provide external threat to give the kids a little bit of a challenge. Keep it interesting for them. So the students have to maintain availability of services. So if you have a commercial web server where you're selling a product, you have to try to keep that online. Sometimes you have a database or a mail server or an Active Directory server that are constantly being pulled to make sure that they're still up and running. The students are also given business injects. So it depends per competition, but usually these are like every hour or so. They'll be given certain challenges to do that are supposed to fit whatever business scenario they're currently playing out. It depends on where you are, but some of these can be more policy related or more reporting related, or they can be more technically challenging. For example, I've seen in the past where students were expected to write a disaster recovery policy, which they may or may not just copy from somewhere off the internet and submit. Or they could be giving something like, here's a new firewall, I want you to evaluate it and tell me if it's good or bad. I've also seen ones where it was much more IT focused, like I want you to add a printer, or I want you to add a specific user or remove a user from the network. Students are also expected to detect and respond to outside threats. So you have these red team guys that are attacking the network, and the students have to figure out where they're coming from and how to lock down their services enough to prevent attacks. They get bonus points for writing reports saying for successful detection, like an incident responder would. So if you saw an attack come from a specific IP address, using a certain method to get in. Hey, I found a web shell on the web server. I think they used a SQL injection in this form to get in. It's been patched. Then the students get bonus points for submitting reports like that. The goal of this is to balance security needs against business needs. This is a little bit different than the other CTFs that are strictly challenge focused. This is supposed to, help prepare them for real world scenarios, as well as get them to a point where they can talk intelligently and professionally about the security of their network, right? So a lot of times you'll have someone acting as a CTO or a CEO that will come in and talk to the students and ask them how they're doing and to get updates from them. It's broken up into 10 regions. Each region does it slightly differently, which can be a bit of a challenge when you go to a national competition because maybe one region's red team isn't as strong as another region's red team. Or the injects of one region are different from the injects of another region. So they all do things a little bit differently. But that could still keep things interesting. The last 2 years have been won by University of Central Florida from the Southeast region. So congratulations to them. Usually out of CCDC, you also have a lot of job offers for the students that are winning these competitions. So it makes for a great resume builder to say that you have participated in these types of events, and also an opportunity to get internships or to get jobs once they graduate. Here's a quick slide just showing you the registration schedule. It's coming up for Southeast, so if you're involved in if you have students that are in the colleges, or if you know somebody that's interested, this is the website to go and register. Speaking more locally, we do one here called the Palmetto Cyber Defense Competition. We've been doing it for a couple years now, and it's based off of the CCDC model. CCDC is a 2-day competition where it's the same team over a weekend, usually. We do it a little differently. We have a 3-day competition but one day is for high school students, one day is for college students, and one team is for pro teams that work in the industry. We've also had some military teams come in to also compete on pro day as well. Student teams, in the same fashion, are responsible for a small business while they're being attacked by a red team, and teams are scored for maintaining access while responding to these threats. So in that case, it's very similar. The Palmetto Digital Forensics Competition was a new addition last year, where we had one of Spay War's forensics guys come out and do a kind of a Jeopardy style challenge specific to forensics. So there were some data recovery challenges, some malware analysis, some network PCAP traffic analysis to get flags that you could then submit for points. This happens at the same time as PCDC, so anybody that's not actually competing in the PCDC event can show up and try their hand at this. There has been some criticism of the cyber defense competitions by people that prefer the other types of CTFs. Some say it's not real with regard to some of the business injects, some of the challenges, some of the reporting requirements, and some of the red team attacks that are set up. A lot of times in some of the other competitions, they'll have very old workstations or servers that haven't been patched in many, many years, and people say that's unrealistic until you actually work in the industry and you see that people still have that one XP box running that one service that they're not allowed to patch because that would break the custom applications that they have installed on there. Some people complain about the lack of offense by the students. They either want the students to be able to hack the red team back or to attack the other students. Obviously, from a running the competition standpoint, lots of things could potentially go wrong there. So for the sake of this, we don't allow the students to do that. It also gets into a very gray area with regard to legal stuff of businesses in the real world attacking, doing active countermeasures against people that are attacking them. So we try not to encourage that. We also try not to teach the students anything that they would then go back to their schools and attack their schools with, because we've been questioned about that in the past, where they said, hey, somebody got in the grading system, is this something that they learned at PCDC? And we said, absolutely not, we would never do that. There's a question about the host being previously compromised. Again, this is one of the things for CCDC that is a little different by region. Some regions pre-install malware on the host, others do not. So at the beginning of the competition, it becomes a race against the students to see who can get access to the boxes first. Whereas other ones install backdoors, install keyloggers, install malware that will beacon back out, or sometimes they will plant devices inside of the network so they can gain access later. Some people complain about this and say it's not very fair. Other people that have worked in incident response that are coming into an unknown network say it's very common that you don't know what the last sysadmin did or how secure he made the network. Or maybe he made backdoors for himself so that he could, connect from home so that he didn't have to come into work one day. There are some complaints about the boring injects, such as the policy paperwork, drills, a lot of IT stuff that the kids don't really like to do. Sometimes they're repetitive. At PCDC, we have tried to adjust our injects so they are a little more technical, to put the kids in a little bit more of an incident responder role and kind of give them similar forensics challenges as the ones that they're seeing in these other CTF competitions, to help keep things a little bit interesting, right? with scoring, with normal CTFs, you do a challenge, you get a flag, you submit the flag, and you get to watch your score go up. So you get immediate feedback about what you're doing right or what you're doing wrong. With CCDC and PCDC, you don't get to see that. There is a scoreboard, but it shows teams ranked without scores because a lot of different things go into that score as opposed to these normal CTFs where it's either binary. You either get it right or you get it wrong. With this, it's some combination of your service uptime combined with the points that you're getting for incident response reports and the reports that you do as part of injects, or the challenges you get as part of injects. So it's a little bit more complicated when it comes down to this. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about the teams for PCDC and CCDC. So you have your white team down in front. Those are your judges. Those are the people that will score and decide, read the reports and give points back to the teams. You have your gold team in the back. Those are the people that are building and designing this lab network, which sometimes takes months to do. A lot goes into building these networks and these challenges. The black team is usually the same people as the gold team, but not always. These are the people that maintain the network during the competition. So a lot of good network folks are part of the black team to make sure everything runs smoothly the day of, or the days of. On the far right, you have your blue team. Those are your students that are there to defend your team. They're also the mentors that go out to the schools to help educate the kids on the competition. SPAWAR has mentors for both Cyber Patriot that go out to the schools and volunteer, as well as the high school for PCDC to go out and help train them on some of these defensive tools and defensive techniques to prepare them for this competition. In the back, we have the red team. Those are the attackers. These are the ones that will hopefully give the students a little bit, keep things interesting for the students by providing a little adversarial action and a little network traffic for them to help detect and respond to. Pink team, there really is no pink team, but we're going to call these like red team light. So at SPAWAR, we have some people that don't get to red team during their normal day job, but they like the idea of it, and they are kind of like red teamers in training. So we're going to call those guys red team light. This might be like one day or the one weekend out of the year where they get to come and participate in this stuff, right? Not pictured is the orange team, who is the users, because apparently he didn't show up in the Power Rangers very often, as I found out through Google searches. Exactly. So this is kind of the breakdown of the different teams. But by the end of the day, the students kind of feel like it was just like the judges and red team against them for the entire day. So this is the end of day scenario. Right? So how do we overcome that? How do we overcome all those red team guys, right? Some very simple practices can help teams be victorious. Number one, keep calm and change your password. A lot of the times, red teams are not using secret tools or zero-day exploits to gain access to your network. They found your admin login that's still set to admin for the password, right? This is how it is in the real world too. It's, for the most part, it's a lot of default credentials. If you look at all the Internet of Things, botnet, denial of service attacks, those botnets just scan the network for devices with default credentials. That's how they got access into those devices. So this is part of what we, as the mentors, teach the students and try to get the students to do. This is also what SANS lists as critical security controls for all businesses to do. Right? These are things everyone should be doing to ensure the safety of their network. They should be taking a hardware and software inventory. You should know what's on your network. You should know if maybe there's a Raspberry Pi that somebody taped under your table, right? That's beaconing out to the world. Maybe it's just a DNS server that somebody locked in a closet and completely forgot about for years and years and years, right? Secure configurations, going back to default credentials, the FTP server. Does your FTP server allow anonymous access? Does it allow read access outside of directories that you intended? Admin privileges. Who has admin rights? Does everybody on the network, or is it only specific users? Defenses, host-based and network-based, application whitelisting, and firewall privileges. These are things that we have worked to get into our PCDC competition, to give the students some control of their boundary defenses. You're also seeing this in a lot of the CCDC competitions as well, and are starting to get into the Cyber Patriot competitions with the Cisco packet tracer stuff also. At the end, you start getting into data recovery, making sure you have backups. What happens if the red team wipes your database at the end of the day? What happens if you're running a e-commerce server and suddenly you no longer have track of any of your sales or your inventory or your customers, right? So that speaks specifically to the business needs of these competitions. A couple other things in there: incident response, trying to detect people doing bad stuff on your network, trying to block it. All of these things are obviously important. They have to be prioritized by the team, and they have to be learned by the team. Mubix is an individual that has played a large part in both regional CCDC competitions and national CCD competitions. I got to be on his team this year at Nationals. He has actually created a document, How to Win CCDC, where he goes in depth as to what teams should be doing to win these competitions. Specifically with team roles. So if you should know who is the leader and who is responsible for reporting and talking to those CEOs or CTOs. You should know who is going to be your Linux guy, who's going to be your Windows guy, who's going to be your networking guy, your forensics guy or lady, and to know who to talk to if something happens, right? If you get an inject to go do something on the Linux box, you need to know who to give it to or who is available as the leader that can accomplish that quickly. Create playbooks. This is the same thing in real-world scenarios and real-world businesses. If something happens, you need to know how to respond to it. You need to have a solid list of people to contact when certain things happen. You need to know like what to do in specific scenarios, like how to recover your database if it should go down, right? You need password sheets. This is somewhat competition specific. Obviously, all the teams should change their passwords. So they're not allowed to bring electronic media in, but they are allowed to bring a binder with written notes. So a lot of times he suggests printing out a list of password sheets that you can rotate throughout the day. Cheat sheets for specific commands and networking to move through quickly and make changes, or specific websites that you know you need to go download software from. You also need to know what services and users are supposed to be on that network. Is that FTP server on your network, was that added by you, or was that added by the red team to exfiltrate files from your network, right? So that's one of the things you have to know. Is that SSH server, was that there before I got there? Does it say in the notes that needs to be running on this system? Are all questions the students kind of have to ask themselves. Is that wheel user Was he there before? Is that part of the Linux system, right? In the end, it's really about having fun and learning. So this is one example of a blog that we stood up on one of the team's servers for them, just to let them know that we cared about them and to see if they were watching, to notice that their Active Directory box now was running web services. We also, this was part of last year's scenario where they had delivery trucks that we thoughtfully changed to Pop-Tart Cat, NanCat there, to try to add a little levity. We know there's a lot of stress for all the student teams, so we try to supply them with solid memes throughout the day to kind of keep them moving and keep them entertained. We also installed keystroke loggers, to make sure that we knew how to get back into the system, but also to kind of keep track on the students and make sure that we could give them advice afterwards. So you can kind of see at the bottom, they want to know how to get rid of the red team. And that's something that the red team gets to go after the competition to speak with each of the teams and provide feedback. So if we are on the box and monitoring what they are doing, that allows us to provide better feedback to the teams. If we're locked out from the start of the competition and we don't see anything that the teams do, they say, did I do well? Did I, was I successful? I didn't detect any of your events. And all you can say is you did a great job locking down the firewall, but that's all we saw, right? Sometimes you are monitoring the box as they're running search queries, and you can watch what defensive actions they're trying to do to remove you from the network, right? And that's something you can provide to the students. Like, hey, I saw you trying to remove me here, but I had persistence mechanisms that would add it back later, right? So you have to look for those backup services. Just a few slides. One year we also replaced the bootloader on the laptops with NanCat. That was a big hit with all the kids. In the end, I think for the most part, they learn a lot during the process. It is kind of a stressful day, but every time we do this competition, we have kind of an outbrief with the students, and they give presentations and talk about all the things they liked and didn't like and the things they learned during the competition. What's very critical is motivation, critical thinking, and self-study. This is true for CTFs as it is true in life. These skills that they are learning also roll into those careers. So as these students are doing these competitions, whether it's CTFs or the cyber defense challenges, these are things that they can talk to future employers about and have something to show for it, right? So you can say, hey, I worked at a fast food restaurant, all summer. Or you can say, like, hey, I did fast food restaurants all summer, but I also learned how to do pfSense firewalls, and I learned web exploitation and web development, and I did this competition. And that's much more impressive as an employer to see that someone is willing to go that extra distance to learn new things, especially in this field, right? So next up, I have a couple of resources. These are just general practice CTFs. There are hundreds of them out on the internet. The first one I'll show you in 1 second, but they're all a little bit different. The CTF time is just a giant list. Some of them, like Flare-On, are kind of reverse engineering challenges. Some are more Linux operating system based. Some are web based. But they're all a little bit different. That first link actually goes to this website. So all of these are individual VMs or individual websites for specific technologies. So there's there's reverse engineering ones, there's web ones, there's networking labs, there's online websites, there's mobile applications for pretty much anything that you want to start practicing on, right? So any questions? No? All right, so next up, real quick, we're going to have Tilson Galloway. Yes, come up, and he's one of the high school students that has competed in PCDC. And can give you a little more feedback about what they're doing at his school.
So, to start off, a little bit about the Porter Gaud cybersecurity team. We were founded in 2015, so last school year, by Max Harley, who actually presented earlier today on shellcode in that room over there. In our first year, we were third place at the BSides Charleston CTF. We got first place at the CarolinaCon CTF against professional. We were the only high school team there, and we placed first in Raleigh, North Carolina. And then we placed second at PCDC on the high school day. So this year, the team is made up of 11 students, most of which have no prior experience with security and generally are just taking the standard computer science classes. They range from freshmen to seniors, and it's actually really interesting how a lot of the time in the security team, it's actually the freshmen, not the seniors and the juniors, who are the most motivated and therefore do the best in the club. So we compete in Cyber Patriots, various CTFs throughout the year, and then PCDC to end our year, which Brian did a great job of talking about. So this was mostly all covered, but Cyber Patriot gives Windows Server, and then Ubuntu images. And it tries to gamify something that's really not so fun to high schoolers, securing and hardening machines, and makes it more fun by playing sounds and giving points based on changing passwords and setting up local security policy. So it makes people feel like that. So at PCDC, I'll just skip over the first two since Brian covered it. But what students tend to find really fun about PCDC is just the feeling of being attacked by the red team all day and just thinking everything's going fine, and then just seeing Nyan cats or Minecraft servers popping up on your website. And then also what was fun in past years at PCDC is there would be social engineering. There wasn't much of this last year, but from what I've heard, there would be the red team coming in with crayon-made badges and just bringing in a camera and just filming the password sheets and what was happening on every computer. So I found this on Twitter a couple days ago, and it brought me some flashbacks. So by the end of the day at PCDC, the red team won. And not that it matters, but this was our team. So another thing that I found when running the cybersecurity team is that people find hacking really fun, and that's really what motivates people to join the club. So obviously that makes our training have to have a big emphasis on ethics, knowing that you can probably go learn something and then go 10 minutes later after our break, go exploit that on the Porter Gaud servers, which we don't do. And then CTFs also serve as a great hands-on learning experience, because even if you don't know, you'll end up spending enough time on the CTF problems where when you go read a write-up, it'll all just make sense to you. So, so on the 28th of January, we're going to have there's a completely student-run CTF being run at Porter Gaud, and it's being run by Charles Trulak, Cameron Hay, Charles is over there, and myself. And it's completely free for all high schoolers to compete. And it's going to be an all-day event. There will be prizes and lunch, and it's open to all skill levels. So you don't have to have gone and competed in PCDC or you go do CTFs every weekend. You can have no experience in security, and we'll make sure to help you accomplish what you came to do that day.
that being made available to all the local high schools?
Yes, that's open to. So that's open to. It's aimed at high schools in the Low Country, but really any high schools are like anywhere are welcome to come and compete in it.
Does spectators come?
Maybe.
I'm working I'm in the cybersecurity industry.
Yeah.
And I've graduated high school years ago, but obviously.
I will have to, if you can email me, I'll talk to you after this. So, training is something that we take seriously, but we also make sure to keep it fun. Like, we don't just sit there and have a classroom environment all day and talk about networking and TCP/IP all day. So we meet every Saturday and we cover ethics, obviously, Windows security, Active Directory, networking, and then red team basics and penetration testing. And we generally do penetration testing second semester, and just to ensure that everyone is aware of the moral implications of using the things that you learn. And at the end of the year this year, we're going to all get Security Plus certified. So all of the knowledge you learned, so you have something written for all of the knowledge that you hopefully learned throughout the year. So in the future, obviously after we run the CTF, we'd like to make it an annual event that possibly we get sponsors from. And then we'd like to start competing in more high-level CTFs that aren't necessarily aimed at high schoolers. And then next year, hopefully we're going to have a cybersecurity class at school. And that's what I got.
So, are many CTF events across public networks?
A lot of them are internationally held. We're not.
Distributed, I should say. Distributed events.
So a lot of CTFs are held internationally. They open it up during a weekend and allow anybody to sign up and compete for the most part. It really depends on each individual CTF competition. Like a lot of them, especially the high school and college ones, are set up to award prizes to those teams, but often allow other teams to register in a non-competition capacity. So they can still get flags, they just won't get any of the prize monies or rewards that go to the schools. Thanks. Any other questions? Yes?
Has Gold Team ever thought about making Team 1 a different environment from Team 2? So that Team 1 doesn't have the exact same exploits as Team 2 is 3, 4, 5, and really mix it up next year?
So the problem with, so the question was asking if each team should have its own separate environment, which is...
Not environment, but just different, not Tomcat for Team 1 through 6. Tomcat for Team 1, but Team
Right.
3 doesn't have Tomcat.
So that would be great if we didn't have one day to attack these networks, right? It's a limitation of the gold team's time, because then they would have to build out different scenarios for each team, and it's a lot harder for the red team that has to basically do a penetration test on 8 networks as opposed to one network that you can then share, right? So it's kind of a time constraint when you're doing these types of competitions.
Would you be able to do that, actually? Like, if the students were the red team and, like, kind of experiment with that? Like...
So there are competitions like that. It's just not the focus of like PCDC and CCDC. Again, there are some ethical constraints when you're talking about teaching kids to attack networks that have to be taken into consideration. But like these guys, if they want to stand up their own private lab server or network and attack each other to learn different techniques and then defend against them, which is one of the best ways to do it, there's plenty of resources on the internet and for VMs like that. Thanks.
And that's also, in private labs like that, or something that NodeSC, which is a nonprofit for cybersecurity in high schools and colleges out of Charleston, is working to create more of.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.